A new federal report says that the majority of hate crimes committed over a 12-year period in the U.S. have not been reported to police. The report released by the Bureau of Justice Statistics suggests that most of the hate crimes that occurred between 2004 and 2015 were not reported because they were handled some other way. The report adds that those who survived the crimes did not report their cases because they felt the police would not help and that their experiences were not considered important. It also shows a high concern among U.S. citizens over the ongoing tensions between law enforcement and Black and Latino communities. Thus, the statistics indicate there is a high surge in attacks against Muslims and Hispanics across the country since President Donald Trump took office in January. Joining us now to discuss this further via Skype is Jason Unruhe, political commentator and analyst. Many thanks for joining us here on PressTV, sir. Now, first of all, it is disturbing to know that half, or at least the majority of hate crimes committed over a 12-year period have not been reported to police. How much of it do you blame on the fact that the police is not very compliant in recording such attacks as hate crimes?
Well, I think the police, to a very large degree, are themselves very much racist and don't care much for hate crimes. Because a good deal of the hate crimes that are carried out in the U.S. are actually very small things, like somebody yelling at somebody else, or maybe somebody threw something. And these are things that, generally speaking, the police don't find worth their time, because they prefer to focus on much bigger, serious things. But when placed in the context of racism, it is very important, but it is not important in the eyes of the police officers themselves, because they feel that their time should be spent on things like drugs, full-blown assault, shootings, rape, murder, things like that. So to the police, these little things don't really matter. And the reason why they don't take it seriously is because there is a great deal of racism that runs through law enforcement in general.
So, for example, when the case of a Muslim teenager who was killed in Virginia with a bat during which the police described as a road rage incident and not a hate crime in the month of Ramadan, what is the problem here?
I think the problem is that it's much easier for them to just simply dismiss it as a road rage incident. Once you take it into the context of a hate crime, it requires more evidence, it requires more paperwork, it requires more due diligence on the part of the police. However, if they just reduce it to the level of simply a road rage incident, it's much easier for them to deal with. But I think there's a much bigger problem. The police and the government in general have an interest on minimizing the amount of reported hate crime incidents, because the lower it is, the better it makes them look. I mean, it's very easy to skew statistics like this when you just simply don't acknowledge that they were hate crimes to begin with, or that you just dismiss them as something else. It's a very underhanded way to twist government statistics in favor of making the government and the society in general look better than it actually is. In doing so, you can make it look like things have changed when they really haven't. So it requires less effort to give the appearance of combating racism than it does actually doing it.
Well, there's also the questions raised regarding the Department of Justice in the U.S. as well. We've seen in the past that it has, for example, failed to pursue such cases or call them or label them as hate crimes or crimes that are steeped in racism, for example. That also compounds the issue. And also, for example, when we see the case of George Zimmerman or other such people who walk away without charge, without indictment, without jail time for killing people through acts of racism, that does raise a lot of questions about the society as a whole as well, doesn't it?
It certainly does. there's a great deal of complexity when it comes to cases, particularly like the Zimmerman case. Zimmerman, there is absolutely no doubt that his actions were racially motivated. However, if we do reduce it to the technicalities of the law, which is what is done in cases like this, it appears as though he didn't legally do anything, even though his actions were entirely racially motivated. And he should have, in my opinion and the opinion of many others, should have served some serious jail time for having instigated the entire situation with Trayvon Martin. But the law tends to find ways to make things easier. If you can make it a technicality for something else or some other kind of motivation, then it's all the easier on their part. And a great deal of that very much is fueled by the racism of the society in general. The United States is founded on racism. It was founded on the genocide of Native Americans. It was founded on essentially what is a genocide of over 100 million African peoples during the slave trade. And that kind of thing, which extends far into society today, does not go away so easily.
All right, let's leave it there for now. That's Jason Unruhe, political commentator and analyst, joining us via Skype from Ontario. It's always great having you with us here on Press TV.